So, your ex is stubborn and you're afraid they're not going to reach out during no contact? Or they have too much pride? Or their ego is too big? Well, have I got news for you. There's something that overrides all of those things. It's stronger than stubbornness, pride, ego, and no, it's not interest level. I know if you listened to me before, you're like, oh, she's going to talk about interest level. No, no, no. This is about biology. That's right. What do I mean? Well, stay tuned and you'll find out. Hi, this is Lucia with The Art of Love. I'm a dating and relationship expert specializing in helping you get your ex back or to get over your ex. And welcome back, my beautiful no contact army. Have you been a good little soldier? If you have, you've stayed in no contact, of course, and you've downloaded my app Silencio. And the link to that is underneath every single video and podcast. And if you too would like to join our army, just hit the subscribe button and the bell notification and you're in. And to read our manual, go to nocontactsecrets.com where you can read 2 free chapters before you purchase the book. Okay, so stubbornness comes from the ego. A stubborn personality says things like, well, I'm not texting first. I'm standing my ground. I'm not going to break. They can wait. I'm not admitting I was wrong. But here's the thing. Stubbornness is cognitive. It lives in the prefrontal cortex, the I've decided I'm not doing this part of the brain. However, attachment activation is physiological. It lives in the body, and the body always wins. They cannot stubborn their way out of contacting you. Their nervous system simply won't allow it. And once attachment activates, the body begins to send distress signals. These aren't thoughts. These are full body responses, stress responses. Eventually, they're going to feel longing, which means they're going to experience things like increased cortisol, elevated heart rate at night, difficulty sleeping. This is when we get those sleepless nights. Mental loops that they can't stop. Being irritable, intrusive thoughts, anxiety. You can override a thought. You cannot override your nervous system. The nervous system always wins. That's why even the most controlled, disciplined, emotionally shut down people eventually reach out. How do we know that? Because stubborn people eventually cry. Stubborn people eventually apologize. Stubborn people eventually call. They eventually fold. They eventually reveal feelings they swore they never show. The nervous system overrides ego, which is good news for you. So you're not depending on their willpower. You're depending on biology. Being stubborn only works in situations where they're not that emotionally invested, or their ego feels superior, or they don't see long-term value in you or the relationship. Their interest is low. Of course, I was going to mention that. Their attachment has not been activated. There's nothing at stake. So they feel like, well, there's nothing to lose. So what do I care? And also, if they know that you are eventually going to chase. So if you were anxious in the relationship, you would always run after them, no matter what, then they don't need to be stubborn because they know, I'll hear from them eventually, which is why it's so important to stay in no contact. So in those situations, being stubborn is easy because the emotional stakes are low. However, when feelings are involved, the personality cracks. Think of the strongest, most prideful men, mob bosses, ex-military, alpha males, hypermasculine guys, men who never apologize. Every single one of them breaks when emotion plus attachment plus shame collide. Pride doesn't protect you from attachment. If anything, it makes the emotional crash even harder. Now, stubborn people shut down emotions, but they don't erase them. A stubborn person doesn't rise above feeling guilty, longing, afraid. They're just delaying the feeling. Eventually, the body says, enough, fix this. Now, every attachment style breaks, but the mechanism that breaks it is different. So let's go through the different attachment styles. So let's go with secure. About 50% of the population is secure. So they don't really want to be stubborn because they don't like the tension and they value connection. They want emotional clarity. And so they reach out because it feels healthier. Their logic overrides everything. They think, this is dumb. Let me just reach out. So there's no ego war. There's no push-pull. Their body doesn't even need to override anything because their logic does. Anxious, which if you're listening to this, you're probably anxious. I find most people who listen and are trying to get an ex back are anxious. Now, they break because the panic becomes unbearable. The uncertainty makes them physically uncomfortable. Their nervous system cannot sit with silence and uncertainty, as I'm sure you well know. The fear of abandonment triggers compulsion, and they actually physically feel sick if they try to hold out. So their body overrides pride and stubbornness very quickly, within hours or days, to relieve the panic. So this is the fastest override style. Dismissives, as you may have guessed, hold out the longest, but eventually the absence starts to feel hollow, and that familiar comfort in distance becomes uncomfortable. Curiosity creeps in. Their ego wants to restore harmony. So in this case, their rational mind wins, not their emotions. Dismissives stay gone the longest, but they come back when it makes logical sense because they think, well, this is inefficient. I want clarity. They calculate the cost benefit and decide to reconnect on their terms. So their body doesn't take over, but their logic does. Now, the fearful avoidant, which I know most of you are dating, it seems, this is the style where stubbornness has the least power. The body overrides everything the hardest. And why is that? Because fearful avoidants have avoidant defenses which protect, but they have anxious wiring underneath which panics. And they have shame sensitivity and intense attachment needs and fear of abandonment and fear of closeness and emotional dysregulation. So this all builds up and builds up until the system cracks. So silence hits them the hardest physiologically. That's why they can go from 0 to 60 emotionally with no warning, which is good for you if you're dating an FA. So even people who are stubborn as hell eventually call, text, apologize, break, crack, reach out, cave, soften, admit they messed up, because the body forces movement when the emotional pressure gets too high. Personalities are stubborn. Attachment systems are not. Attachment wounds always override ego logic. And once the emotional pressure crosses a threshold, even the strongest ego runs out of fuel. Eventually the body says, I am the captain now, and makes them reach out. Isn't that great? So stubbornness may delay contact, but it cannot prevent it. Okay? So now I want to hear from you. Are you still concerned that your ex is stubborn and won't reach out? Or do you now feel better after hearing why stubbornness will not stop them from reaching out? Comment below. And if you would like my help to get your ex back, you can contact me at theartoflove.net/coaching, and we will send you the rates. They are not on the website, and the direct link is underneath every single video and podcast. If you found this video helpful, hit the subscribe button. If you're listening to this as a podcast, also hit the subscribe button so you don't miss future episodes. And finally, remember, love inspires, empowers, uplifts, and enlightens.